Once upon a time, in a humble carpenter's shop on the edge of a small Italian town, a miracle was waiting to happen. A simple log of wood, no different from the ones used to warm the fire, laughed, cried, and dreamed of becoming something more. This is not just a tale for children. It's the story of every heart that has stumbled, lied, learned, and grown. The Adventures of Pinocchio is a journey through mischief and mercy, hunger and hope, the kind of story that begins with laughter and ends in tears of redemption. So sit back, because this isn't the smooth fairy tale you think you know. It's the real story of the wooden boy who became human. It begins in a small Italian workshop, where the air smells of sawdust and varnish, and the sound of hammering fills the day. Master Antonio, known in the village as Mr. Cherry because of the color of his nose, picks up an ordinary log. His plan is simple, to shape it into the leg of a table. But the moment he raises his chisel, something extraordinary happens. The log laughs, not the creak of wood or the echo of tools, but a clear, childish laugh. Startled, Antonio drops the tool. Every time he touches the wood, it groans, sighs, or giggles. The poor carpenter begins to tremble. He imagines tricks, spirits, or perhaps the devil himself playing games in his shop. Yet the piece of wood lies there, calm and ordinary. This strange event sets the stage for everything that follows, a miracle wrapped in the humble skin of a carpenter's log. Into this trembling workshop comes Geppetto, a kind, aging craftsman with a yellow wig and dreams of a small miracle of his own. He's mocked in the town for his simplicity, yet there is warmth in his heart and loneliness in his home. When he sees the talking log, his imagination catches fire. He wishes to carve a puppet that can dance, fence, and make people laugh, something that might earn him a few coins to live on. He names the puppet before even starting Pinocchio. The two carpenters quarrel and exchange playful insults, their friendship wrapped in comical irritation. But soon the piece of wood, the one that laughed, is handed over to Geppetto. As he walks home with it tucked under his arm, unaware of its hidden life, he hums to himself, already dreaming of his wooden son. In Geppetto's poor little room, filled with the faint smell of paint and glue, the work begins. With each cut of the knife, the log seems to come alive. The eyes move before they are even finished. The mouth opens and laughs before Geppetto teaches it a word. The moment the legs are carved, Pinocchio jumps off the table and runs out the door. Imagine the sight: a puppet, half-painted, sprinting down the street, crying with laughter while the old man chases after him. People crowd the streets, laughing and shouting. The carabinier catches the puppet, but somehow Geppetto is blamed for causing the uproar. By the end of the day, the poor man who carved life from wood is led away to prison, while the puppet who caused the trouble is left alone and free, his wooden heart fluttering with mischief. Night falls. The room is dark, and the new puppet begins to explore. From a corner, a small, wise voice speaks, the talking cricket. It warns him gently: disobedient children never end well. Those who refuse to study or obey their parents will suffer sorrow and regret. But Pinocchio, restless and proud, refuses to listen. The cricket's advice feels like chains to his playful spirit. In anger, he grabs a wooden mallet and throws it. The voice stops. Silence fills the room. The act is quick, brutal, and childish. Pinocchio feels a flicker of guilt, but hunger quickly pushes it aside. The puppet's heart is not wicked, but it is impulsive, driven by the need for freedom and fun, blind to consequence. His stomach growls. The night grows colder. Pinocchio searches the empty shelves, finding nothing but an egg. Joy surges through him. At last, food. He cracks it open, and, in a twist of magic, a small chick bursts out, thanks him for his kindness, and flies out the window. Pinocchio stares, his hunger sharper than before, his hope shattered. He begins to cry, not just from hunger but from the cruel trick the world has played on him. The scene, though comic, strikes with pity this child of wood, so alive in desire, yet punished for every small joy. Desperate for warmth, Pinocchio curls up by the hearth and rests his feet near the fire. Exhaustion overtakes him. When morning comes, smoke fills the room and his feet, those lively wooden legs that carried him away, are burned to cinders. He wakes in terror, crying helplessly, trapped by his own folly. Just then, the door creaks open. Geppetto, newly released from prison, stands in the doorway. He looks at the puppet, sees the damage, and sighs. Without scolding, he sets to work. He carves new feet, smooth and perfect, fastening them carefully. The love in his work replaces anger. Pinocchio promises to behave, and for a moment, peace settles over them both. Geppetto, though hungry himself, gives Pinocchio his only 3 pairs. The puppet devours them, skin, core, and all, realizing only afterward the depth of the old man's sacrifice. For the first time, a spark of gratitude lights in his wooden chest. He asks for clothes, and Geppetto, with patient hands, sews him a suit from paper, shoes from bark, and a cap of dough. Pinocchio laughs at the ridiculous outfit, yet wears it proudly. The father's pride and the son's excitement mingle into something tender. When Pinocchio begs for school, Geppetto sells his only coat to buy a spelling book. His shivering body and gentle smile carve a lesson deeper than any words. Love gives until it has nothing left. The first morning of his schooling, Pinocchio starts well. He carries his book, imagining himself a scholar. But laughter and music spill from a nearby square. A puppet show. Curiosity wins. He sells a spelling book for 4 pennies and buys a ticket. Inside the tent, he's greeted by a stage full of wooden puppets like himself. They stop mid-performance, shouting with joy at the sight of their brother. The theater erupts into chaos. Fire Eater, the great bearded showman, storms in furious. But his heart softens when he sees Pinocchio's tears. The moment trembles between comedy and kindness. Fire Eater spares him and even gives him 5 gold coins, meant for Geppetto, to ease the old man's suffering. For once, fortune seems to smile. On the road home, Pinocchio meets 2 beggars, the fox, pretending to be lame, and the cat, pretending to be blind. Their voices drip with false pity. They speak of a magical field of miracles where coins, if buried, sprout into gold trees. Pinocchio, innocent and eager, listens wide-eyed. He believes them. The fox and the cat praise his cleverness, promising to guide him. Greed mingles with hope, and the puppet forgets his father, his promise, his home. The road darkens as they travel, and the warm glow of honesty fades behind him. Night falls. Shadows twist across the road. The fox and the cat vanish and return disguised as robbers. They demand his gold coins. Pinocchio runs, terrified, clenching the money in his fist. The chase ends beneath a black oak tree. The puppet is caught and strung up by the neck. His wooden body swings in the wind, eyes wide, tongue swollen, life fading. It's a moment of shocking cruelty. Collodi's world spares no one from consequence. Pinocchio's adventure of fun and foolishness turns into a nightmare. The wind moans through the branches, whispering that every lie, every greed has its price. But fate intervenes. A pale little girl with blue hair appears in the window of a small white house. She calls for help. The guards come, cutting the rope, and Pinocchio is carried inside, half dead. When he awakens, she cares for him, feeds him medicine, and scolds him softly. Her presence feels otherworldly, part mother, part spirit. When she asks about the gold coins, Pinocchio lies, and immediately his nose begins to grow. Longer, until it touches the walls. The fairy laughs kindly but firmly, reminding him that lies grow like weeds, plain for all to see. With a touch, she restores his nose, teaching without cruelty what pain already had. Recovered and restless, Pinocchio meets the fox and the cat again. They pretend joy at seeing him alive, filling his ears with promises. The field of miracles awaits. Against all reason, Pinocchio follows them once more. The journey is filled with flattery, cunning, and lies disguised as kindness. When they reach the field, they tell him to dig a hole, bury the coins, and return tomorrow. The puppet, trusting and proud, does as told, whispering good night to his buried treasure. He sleeps under the stars, dreaming of golden trees. Morning comes. Pinocchio rushes to the field, his heart hammering with greed and joy. The coins are gone. Only a hole remains. He weeps and wails, calling for help, but the townsfolk laugh at his foolishness. The fox and the cat have vanished, leaving only footprints and echoes. In a parody of justice, the puppet is taken before a judge, a gorilla dressed in robes, who listens solemnly and then declares him guilty for being so naive. Pinocchio is thrown into prison. Collodi's satire cuts deep. In a world built on deceit, innocence itself is treated as a crime. Days pass in the dark cell. Pinocchio repents, swearing to be good. When word spreads that a great victory has been won by the king, the jailer releases all prisoners guilty of serious crimes, but keeps those accused of being innocent. Pinocchio's confession of guilt earns him freedom. He leaves the prison dazed and laughing, unsure whether to cry or rejoice. The world, it seems, has rules of its own, and justice is rarely just. He hurries home, only to learn that Geppetto, searching for him, has gone to sea. The old man built a small boat, determined to find his lost child, but the waves rose, the wind howled, and word spreads that the boat was swallowed by a great shark. Pinocchio collapses in grief. His lies, his stubbornness, his pride, all of it rushes back in a wave of guilt. He vows to change, to study, to work, to be good. For the first time, his promises carry a spark of truth. He joins school, a puppet among boys. He studies hard, determined to make Geppetto proud. The teacher praises him, and his classmates, jealous, mock him. Yet Pinocchio feels the warmth of honest effort. Collodi's Italy breathes through these chapters. Poor children, crowded classrooms, the struggle between play and discipline. Pinocchio's heart begins to grow softer, his choices more careful. But temptation is never far. One afternoon, he is invited to see a great show. He hesitates. He's learned his lesson, or so he thinks, but the laughter of others pulls him in. He lies to the fairy about where he's going, and again his nose stretches long and absurd. He cries, ashamed, and promises never to lie again. The fairy forgives him. The lesson, now repeated, begins to sink deeper, not into his wooden chest, but into the fragile soul taking root inside. Still, Pinocchio's journey is far from over. He wanders from village to village, meeting tricksters, thieves, and dreamers. Every encounter tests his will between ease and effort, play and duty. He helps where he can, stumbles where he shouldn't, and learns through loss and laughter. The path winds onward, and though his steps are wooden, each one carries a little more humanity. By the end of the stretch, the puppet is no longer just a mischievous toy. He is a traveler, learning, erring, hoping, and slowly, painfully becoming real. Pinocchio wanders into a quiet countryside known as the land of the barn owls. Here, the fields stretch wide, and the houses are shabby, inhabited by people who seem as poor as he is. He searches for work, for something honest to fill his empty stomach, but his reputation as a lazy puppet follows him. Doors close, mockery trails behind. In the stillness of the night, the barn owls hoot from the rafters, their calls like questions. Will this boy ever learn? Pinocchio, exhausted, begins to understand that goodness is not luck, it is work, patience, and perseverance. He falls asleep on the roadside, half-starved, and dreams of Geppetto's hands carving him anew, shaping not wood but will. The road ahead brings new travelers and new tricks. A cheerful wagon passes, full of boys singing songs of freedom and laughter. They boast of a place with no school, no work, no teachers, just endless play. Their eyes gleam with mischief, their pockets jingling with candies and games. Pinocchio hesitates, torn between his promise to study and his thirst for joy. His conscience whispers of the fairy's words, yet the music drowns it out. He leaps aboard, thinking only of pleasure. As the countryside slips away, the laughter grows louder and the air sweeter, yet beneath the joy lingers something false, something too easy to be real. They arrive at a land built for idleness, a paradise of foolishness. Streets lined with sweets, games in every corner, no books, no teachers. Days pass like dreams. Pinocchio plays, eats, sleeps, and laughs until he forgets Geppetto, the fairy, and every promise. But one morning, while joking with his companions, he feels a strange stiffness behind his ears. A tail sprouts. His voice cracks into a bray. Horror dawns. He and the others have turned into donkeys, beasts of burden, punished for their laziness. Panic replaces laughter. Pinocchio cries out, but no magic can save him now. The land of play was never a paradise, only a trap disguised as happiness. Sold to a circus master, Pinocchio learns the pain of true humiliation. Whipped, starved, and forced to perform, He becomes a spectacle for laughter, his hooves aching with every step. The crowd cheers as he dances, but his heart breaks. Night after night, he dreams of freedom, of Geppetto's voice calling his name. When he falls lame, the cruel master sells him to a man who plans to skin him for a drum. But fate intervenes again. Thrown into the sea, the donkey's body sinks, and from the depths rises Pinocchio once more, his wooden form restored by mysterious magic. The sea, cruel yet purifying, has given him another chance. Pinocchio's relief is short-lived. He is caught in a net by a green fisherman, whose face is as scaly as his catch. The fisherman mistakes him for a rare fish and prepares to fry him for dinner. Smoke fills the air, oil sizzles, and the puppet's cries echo in vain. But luck, or perhaps mercy, arrives in the form of a dog that saves him, dragging him to safety. Trembling on the shore, Pinocchio realizes how close he came to ending as nothing more than a meal. Gratitude floods him, mixed with shame for all the times he ignored wisdom and love. After countless misfortunes, Pinocchio finds his way back to the fairy's home. She welcomes him not with scolding, but with quiet forgiveness. The house is bright, the garden full of flowers, and her smile carries both sorrow and hope. She calls him her son and tells him he will only become a real boy if he proves himself good, obedient, and truthful. Pinocchio bows his head and promises with all his heart. For a time he keeps his word. He studies, works, and behaves. He even earns praise and friendship. Yet his struggle is not over. The temptations of the world still whisper, testing his newfound will. Pinocchio begins to understand the sweetness of honest labor. He helps his neighbors, studies his lessons, and finds small joys in ordinary days. The fairy rewards him with affection and trust, even telling him she plans to celebrate his transformation. A grand dinner is prepared, new clothes are sewn, and Pinocchio can barely contain his excitement. But when a mischievous companion tempts him to skip the celebration for one more game, the old weakness returns. He goes and loses everything again. The fairy's home vanishes, the lights go dark, and he is left wandering alone under the cold stars, realizing too late that joy built on deceit never lasts. The puppet's heart aches for home. He learns from travelers that Geppetto, still alive, is far away, swallowed by the great sea monster while searching for him. Pinocchio decides to find him, no matter the danger. The journey is long and harsh. He works for food, mends his clothes, and endures hunger without complaint. Each step feels heavier, yet stronger. The once reckless puppet is now driven by purpose. Reaching the shore, he sees the endless sea stretching before him, a blue desert between him and his father. He dives in without hesitation, his wooden limbs cutting through the waves, courage carrying him farther than ever before. The ocean roars like a beast. Waves rise, the sky darkens, and thunder cracks overhead. Pinocchio pushes forward, fighting the current, calling out for his father. Suddenly, the water parts, and a monstrous shark appears, vast as a mountain. Its mouth opens wide, and in one terrible gulp it swallows him whole. Inside the belly of the creature, darkness reigns. The air smells of salt and decay. Yet Pinocchio's fear gives way to determination. He lights a small flame, peering into the shadows, and there, sitting on a rock, pale and weary is Geppetto. The moment is still. Father and son embrace in disbelief. Geppetto's clothes are tattered, his face thin, but his eyes shine with love. He weeps softly, murmuring Pinocchio's name as though afraid it will vanish. Pinocchio kneels before him, begging forgiveness. The old man only smiles and strokes his head. There are no lectures, no anger, only relief and love. Geppetto explains how he survived by eating fish scraps, waiting, hoping. Pinocchio, though frightened, takes charge. He plans their escape. Inside the belly of the beast, the puppet who once caused endless trouble becomes the caretaker, the protector. Pinocchio ties Geppetto to a tuna fish and waits for the right moment. When the monster opens its mouth to yawn, they swim out into the open sea. The current is rough, but the puppet keeps his father afloat, guiding him toward the faint glow of dawn. Hours stretch into eternity. When at last they reach shore, Geppetto collapses. Pinocchio drags him onto the sand, exhausted but alive. The world feels new, washed clean by danger and devotion. For the first time, the puppet feels more human than wood. They find refuge in a humble cottage near the shore, owned by a kind farmer. To repay the man's kindness, Pinocchio works tirelessly, hauling water, chopping wood, learning to live by the sweat of his brow. His hands ache, his back strains, but there is quiet pride in his labor. Geppetto rests, slowly regaining strength. Each night, Pinocchio saves a few coins, dreaming of buying a new coat for his father. Gone is the boastful puppet who chased every thrill. What remains is a boy learning what love truly demands. As weeks pass, Pinocchio hears of a poor family nearby whose child is dying of hunger. Without hesitation, he gives them all his savings, saying nothing to Geppetto. The act fills him with warmth deeper than any applause or coin ever did. That night, the fairy appears once more, glowing softly in his dreams. She tells him that true goodness is not in promises or words, but in the quiet choices one makes for others. Pinocchio listens, his heart swelling with humility and joy. Morning breaks, and sunlight floods the little room. Geppetto wakes and calls his son, but the wooden puppet is gone. In his place lies a real boy, breathing softly, flesh and blood, smiling in his sleep. On the chair beside him are his old wooden limbs, lifeless and still. Geppetto falls to his knees, tears running down his cheeks. Pinocchio opens his eyes and embraces him, whispering, "Father, I am no longer a puppet." Their laughter fills the house, carried by the sea breeze through the open window. It is the sound of love fulfilled, of dreams made real through effort and faith. The journey of Pinocchio is not one of magic alone. It is the story of growth born through mistakes, of innocence tempered by pain. From a block of wood to a real boy, every trial carved his soul deeper, every tear polished his heart. He learned that freedom without responsibility is hollow, and love without sacrifice is fleeting. Geppetto's patience, the fairy's guidance, and his own courage shaped him into what he longed to be, human. And in that transformation lies Collodi's eternal truth, that to become real, one must learn not just to live, but to love and to give.